Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate ringsidenews.com. Got your questions from twitter.com using the hashtag PAIV. Please answer in video. First one today comes from Paul E. Dangerously. I'm assuming it's not actually Paul Heyman. He's a Paul Heyman guy, number 6. Was this the worst Raw ever? No. And no, you know what? Going back, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'll give you a reason why it wasn't the worst Raw of all time. It wasn't expected to be a special show. That Raw was a lame duck episode. It was on 4th of July, a major holiday. Many people go out, watch fireworks with their friends and family. They do barbecues, all that stuff. Not a lot of people are watching wrestling on 4th of July, or any television for that matter. It's quite possible that this week's Raw will be the lowest rated Raw in history. Certainly one of the least watched episodes of Raw in a very long time. That is why WWE did not bother putting together a memorable show. My expectations were very low, and yours should have been as well. So to call it the worst Raw ever, I mean, that's really saying a lot, and especially when it wasn't meant to be anything special. Certainly there have been worse episodes of Raw, and I'm sure even worse holiday episodes of Raw. Moving on here, this one comes from Rion. What did you think of Zack Ryder having the moment once again on Raw? I thought it was strange to see an elimination match on Raw and guys like Cesaro getting pinned by Zack Ryder. Again though, this is a throwaway Raw and it really doesn't count. I mean, it does, but I think that most people will forget about this. They'll forget about Zack Ryder pinning Cesaro. And Zack Ryder also pinned Sheamus, which doesn't bother me nearly as much because I have very little invested in Sheamus at this stage of the game. I really feel it means nothing though. I mean, next week Zack Ryder will be back to losing in 2-minute matches if he even gets a spot on Raw at all, and that's a big question mark. So again, it's really not worth getting too worked up about the outcome of this week's Raw and what happened on the show because it wasn't designed to be a must-see episode of Raw because of the 4th of July holiday. Got this one here from Aaron Rift Guy. Hey Aaron, is it safe to say that the best part of Raw was Enzo's presidential promo? What are your thoughts? He stole my gimmick. When I was a kid, I was able to memorize all the presidents of the United States, and now Enzo's doing it, and good for him. I mean, it's a little cool thing for him to do on 4th of July. I believe he did it in some other video, I think on WWE's website. It might have been, I'm not sure which show it was exactly, but I remember him doing it before on WWE's YouTube channel. And yeah, that was entertaining. Enzo and Cass are always entertaining, and it was a nice touch for 4th of July, definitely. This one comes from Vince Fears No DQ. Love that username. Titus tapped out in front of his kids on Father's Day and dressed as Uncle Sam for the 4th. Is he still being punished? Oh my god, cats are fighting in the background. This is getting a little bit awkward here. Anyways, I'll try to answer your question now. Titus got television time. I mean, that is something significant. The fact that he's being on television on a regular basis, that is something good for him. The cats disagree though. They're more occupied with fighting over that tower in the back. But yeah, Titus O'Neil did come back to television and has gotten into the US title mix. Wow, this is just falling apart here. I'm not sure what you guys... I should probably cut this out, but if it's funny in the background, I'm going to keep it in. Titus O'Neil is getting TV time. That is really the best way to sum up the question, and that's not being punished. If WWE wanted to punish him, he would not be appearing on television. Oh man, this is just too much with the cats in the background. Alright, let's move on here. This one comes from Paul Samuels. Hey Aaron, how can WWE book Raw and SmackDown to make each feel important and have each world title feel important? I'm pretty sure I discussed this before. I'll just sum it up real quick. You need to make SmackDown an equal show to Raw. You need to keep the rosters separate. You need to correct the mistakes from the previous brand split. And you want to make the world title important? Put it on your top guys. Do not put it on a guy who is a mid-carder or a guy that the company sees as a mid-carder, and then when you put the title on that mid-carder, you do not feel like pushing that guy because you feel he's a mid-carder, and as it ends up, the world title ends up losing value and not meaning much of anything. Learn from the mistakes. Everything that people said went wrong with the brand split, correct that this time around. You have a second chance, make it work this time. Got this one here from Colin. Samoa Joe, Aries, Bobby Roode, Finn Balor, and Nakamura being in their mid-30s, do you see them having a big future on the main roster? Absolutely. I think all of them will do very well on the main roster if given the opportunity, and I'm expecting we will see all of them on the main roster sooner than later. All those guys are great. All those guys can be top guys in WWE, in my opinion. They have been paying their dues for many years, and in some cases, well over a decade. These guys have really busted their asses to get to where they're at now in WWE, and all of them deserve a chance to shine on the main roster. So I definitely feel all of them will most certainly have a big future in the company. This one comes from Richard Henderson. When Nia Jax makes her main roster debut, do you think she should get a big heel push similar to Karma? Yeah, I think that would be a good way to utilize her. She's got the size, she's got the intimidating factor, and I think that you could have her go out there and just destroy people and break people in half and push her as a monster. Make her the female Samoa Joe. That would be a great way to utilize her. I mean, really, that's what fits best for her. You don't want to have her come in and lose a bunch of matches, and you don't want to have her be a comedy figure. You want her to be a killer. You want her to come in and make people fear her. Make her like Bray Wyatt or Samoa Joe or any of those guys over the years that get over because they're badasses. I mean, she can definitely play that role very well. Got this one here from Mr. Yuck. If Finn Balor equals money, especially as a face, why the main roster delay? Would a match with Taker push him to the top? The delay is because you do not want to introduce too many people in a short period of time. That's when guys will get lost in the shuffle. Finn Balor, they've been building up his character, and they've had him as NXT champion for a while. Then they had him feud with Samoa Joe. I feel that now is the time. I think 6 months ago it would have been too soon, and there are other guys like Baron Corbin that had been in NXT for a very long period of time, and it was their turn to get promoted to the main roster. It's all about timing, and with Finn Balor, it wasn't the right time yet, but now I feel it is time to bring him up, and I would expect him to be on the main roster imminently. And as far as a match with Undertaker, that's interesting. I mean, I've seen a lot of people comment on Undertaker versus Finn Balor. I've seen that be a match that people have considered to be a dream match because of Balor's character. He would really need to be built up, though. I think you would really need to push that character as this larger-than-life, supernatural-like character. Now, if they do that in WWE on the main roster, and he's built up for 6+ months, then maybe at next year's WrestleMania you could do that match and have Undertaker pass the torch. I mean, that would be a very reasonable way to end Undertaker's career and elevate Finn Balor as the guy who retired Undertaker. But yeah, you would really need to build him up if you're going to do that match for next year's WrestleMania. So if they bring him in for the brand split, he needs to be pushed strong, and his character, the supernatural element to it, really needs to be pushed, I think, for that match to truly be successful if it's going to happen at next year's WrestleMania. Alright, this one comes from Sean. Now that Hideo Hatami is finally back from injury, how much longer do you see him being on NXT before being called up? I think that the company will want to make sure that he's in good health and he doesn't get injured again. So I do not see him debuting on the main roster immediately, but I think in 3-4 months or maybe 6 months from now, he will debut on the main roster. I think he needs some time though, just to make sure that he can handle working a normal schedule in NXT, and if he can do that without getting hurt, then bring him up to the main roster. But you do not want to invest in a guy on the main roster and then he gets hurt again, and then you have to go back to square one. So it's better to just get him involved slowly and let him start increasing his schedule before you debut him on the main roster and go all out. Got this one here from Iper. I wanted to know your opinion on the Revival and if we will ever see them face New Day in a champion versus champion match. I doubt we'll see a champion versus champion match. I've talked about the Revival before. I was at the NXT show in Portland. Excellent match between the Revival and American Alpha. Revival is a great tag team, and I think they will do well on the main roster. I think it's too soon to bring them on the main roster for reasons I mentioned earlier, that it's about timing and you do not want to introduce too many people in a short period of time. American Alpha is set to debut on the main roster soon. By the time the Revival does debut on the main roster, it's quite possible the New Day will be broken up by then. I mean, who knows how much longer the New Day will be a faction. Maybe not even that long with this whole Xavier Woods storyline. But I think that eventually they will be on the main roster, and maybe they will renew their rivalry with the American Alpha on the main roster, maybe at WrestleMania. That would be awesome. I would definitely consider that to be a possibility. So we'll see. This one comes from Joshua. Hey bro, do you think Alex Wright could have been a bigger talent in WCW? I mean, his dance was lame, but he was talented. We'll never know because there were so many talented guys in WCW and they were mainly held back, and you could say Alex Wright was one of them. He was given this dance gimmick which was good as a mid-card act, but it did prevent him from being taken more seriously. WCW did try giving him a renewed push with a repackaged gimmick as Berlin, and it pretty much flopped right away and he went back to just being Alex Wright. So maybe with the right gimmick, under the right circumstances, he could have done better, but it's really hard to say. I mean, if he was in WWE, maybe they would have been able to come up with something better for him. This one comes from Brexit and Chill. What are your thoughts on Kevin Dunn and his apparent influence over WWE programming, creative, and Vince? A lot of people hate on Kevin Dunn. I see comments on the internet, people are always trashing the guy, and there's some things that he does that are annoying, and if he's responsible for the shaky camera work with the quick zooming in and out when guys are engaging in brawls, then I'm not a big fan of that. I really don't like it, but Kevin Dunn deserves a lot of credit. I mean, he has really put in so much work into the production of WWE, and all the good things about WWE production, you have to give Kevin Dunn credit for, and he's been with the company now for, I believe, 3 decades, since the mid-'80s, I believe, and he has done so much that we do not see behind the scenes. He's really one of those guys that, you know, that Ultimate Warrior award that he had that original vision for. You know, guys like Kevin Dunn should be recognized for his achievements in the company, and I would say he definitely deserves a Hall of Fame spot at some point. This one comes from Grant Peoples. What was the greatest tag team feud in wrestling history? I would have to say the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys versus Edge and Christian. That series was just remarkable, and it really defined the Attitude Era besides Steve Austin and The Rock. Those 3 teams going out there and having those series of insane ladder matches, TLC matches, table matches, you name it. They just revolutionized the business, those 3 tag teams. So I think that that's clearly number 1. There have been a lot of great tag team feuds over the years, but in my opinion, nothing will top that series between those 3 tag teams during the early 2000s. That'll do it for this edition of NoDQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. Make sure you check out the Wrestling Hangouts video I did with Mike Nagel. If you haven't already, we discuss Brock Lesnar's fight this coming weekend, UFC 200. Make sure you stay tuned to NoDQ.com for coverage of UFC 200. And make sure you stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding Battleground and SummerSlam. And on that note, I will see you guys next time for more NoDQ&A video.